She never saw Amina. Not really. To Marjorie, Amina was just another black waitress in a fancy restaurant, someone to snap at, dismiss, and humiliate to score some cheap points. But behind the silk ascot and crisp uniform stood a woman who owned more than just grace. She owned the building, the name on the door, and the man Marjorie had spent months trying to charm. And when the truth came out, Marjorie didn't just lose her dinner reservation. She lost everything. Before we go deeper into this story, let us know in the comments section where you're watching us from. And if you enjoy this story, kindly like and subscribe so you don't miss any episode like this, and also to support the channel. Tucked away on a cobblestone street just off King Street in Charleston, the glass fig stood like a glass jewel box, sleek, modern, but with hints of old-world charm etched into its frame. The air smelled of lavender polish and truffle butter, and the clientele arrived in town cars and tailored suits, leaving the ordinary at the door, longing for a life they might never touch. Even the staff uniforms mirrored the luxury. Every server wore deep plum waistcoats, sharply tailored over crisp white shirts, their sleeves rolled exactly one cuff below the elbow. The women wore matching blazers with silk black ascots tied neatly at the neck, finished with silver fig pins gleaming on their lapels. What is about to happen in this luxurious restaurant? The rude customer will not give up, causing troubles upon troubles. At exactly 5:30 p.m., the restaurant opened for dinner service, and like clockwork, Charleston's elite began to trickle in. Politicians, bankers, influencers, people whose smiles graced magazine covers, and who always asked to speak to the owner by first name. At Station 4, Amina stood poised, reviewing the evening's reservations on her sleek handheld tablet. Her posture was calm, shoulders square, lips softly glossed. She had been with the glass fig for 2 years now, and while she moved with the grace of someone in control, she still double-checked everything. Those who had known her in college still struggled to believe it. Amina, the most efficient, no-nonsense medical student, is now thriving in the fine dining industry. What they didn't know was that medicine had always been for her parents. Food was for her. Cooking, tasting, and watching others eat were her sacred rituals. The only thing she loved more than food was sharing it with the one person who understood her passion best, her husband. A flash of dazzling red fabric broke her train of thought. Marjorie, the difficult regular, wrapped in a custom Valentino dress that screamed entitlement. And as always, her arrival promised nothing but trouble. Marjorie Whitmore didn't walk. She arrived. At nearly 6 feet tall in stilettos, she commanded attention the moment she entered. Her red dress, impossibly tailored and likely flown in from Milan, shimmered slightly with each step like silk dipped in candlelight. She swept her blonde hair into a tight French twist, and a diamond tennis necklace glinted at her throat, matching the frosted edges of her manicured nails. She didn't smile. She smirked. The maitre d' offered his usual greeting, but Marjorie brushed past him with the air of someone who believed the building stood because she allowed it to. Her gaze flicked around the room like a queen surveying her court, and then it landed on Amina. Amina gave her the practiced, polite smile that all staff were trained to wear, the kind that said welcome without inviting intimacy. "Good evening, Mrs. Whitmore," Amina said smoothly, placing a hand gently over her tablet. "Table 11 is ready, as requested." Marjorie's eyes swept over Amina slowly, resting a beat too long on her skin tone, then her ascot, then her name tag, like it was something sticky. "Of course it is," Marjorie said finally, her voice crisp, clipped, and cold. "You people are very good with instructions." There it was. The same jab wrapped in civility that Marjorie always delivered with a smile too thin to be genuine. Amina felt the heat crawl up her neck, but kept her expression still. She had learned long ago that people like Marjorie fed on reactions. Marjorie adjusted her clutch and began walking toward her table, pausing long enough to say, "And let's not have another situation like last time. I want someone who speaks clearly. I hate having to repeat myself." With that, she disappeared behind the shimmer of the dining room's crystal partitions, leaving the scent of overpriced perfume and something bitter behind. Amina exhaled slowly, then glanced at her tablet. Marjorie's server tonight was Anthony, young, white from Connecticut, and endlessly eager to please. Marjorie would like that, but Amina had a bad feeling. Something told her tonight would be different, and she was right. Amina rolled her eyes around the staff attending to customers and turned back into the kitchen, looking for Anthony, who seemed to have vanished in a thin air. Now that she thought about it, Anthony had not checked in for the evening shift. Amina had just pulled up Anthony's name beside table 11 when a message blinked on her tablet. Call out. Anthony stuck in traffic. Eta saspi amavostkarin. Sorry. Her stomach tightened. She glanced at the clock. 6:05 p.m. No time to reshuffle. The only available server on the floor was herself, and she already knew what that meant. She had to face the difficult regular. For a moment, she considered asking Chef Lewis to greet Marjorie personally, but the kitchen was already humming at full capacity, and there was no buffer tonight. Amina straightened her shoulders and smoothed down her blazer. She would serve Marjorie herself. If Marjorie had noticed the delay in being greeted, she didn't show it. She sat at her table with the entitlement of someone who expected the world to bend toward her. She had already pulled out her phone, likely drafting one of her infamous Yelp reviews. Amina approached with quiet confidence, pen poised, tablet in hand. Good evening again, Mrs. Whitmore. Anthony won't be available this evening, but I'll be taking care of you. Marjorie looked up slowly, her brow arching in exaggerated disbelief. You? Yes, ma'am. A very thick silence fell between them, and everything suddenly stood still. Marjorie ran her eyes over Amina, looking at her from head to toe, before replying. Well, I'm hungry, and I suppose it can't be helped, she said, waving her hand as though dismissing a beggar. Just don't make a mess of it. Amina swallowed hard and stood at the table, trying to keep her voice steady. She took Marjorie's order for the evening, the usual. Lobster bisque to start, followed by the Wagyu steak, which was well done, which Chef Lewis would probably spit in if he had his way. Amina noted it on her tablet, her fingers tight on the screen, resisting the urge to scratch the irritated tension on the back of her neck. Marjorie didn't seem to notice her discomfort. Her attention was fixed on her phone, tapping away. Amina was used to the look-through-you treatment. She had encountered it more than a few times, but something about tonight just felt different. As Amina leaned in to confirm the wine pairing, Marjorie snapped her fingers. Excuse me, but can you move your hand out of my face? She demanded, voice sharp. And that thick, ugly hair? I don't need to smell your cheap perfume and fake shampoo while trying to enjoy a glass of my finest Pinot Noir. Amina froze for a split second, but quickly composed herself. She backed away slightly, nodding with tight lips. I apologize, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll be more mindful of that. The words came out polite, but her insides churned with anger. She had been here, working at the Glass Fig for 2 years. She had been more than competent, gracious even, but still, she was reduced to this. A faceless servant to the whims of someone who believed her existence was only valid in service to those like Marjorie. As the evening wore on, Marjorie's demands became more absurd. At one point, she waved her hand and sneered. I don't know how you people do it. I could never serve someone like me. But then, I guess you're used to it, right? Amina's smile wavered. The racial undertone was clear, but she kept her composure. It wasn't the first time someone had said something like that. She had been called exotic by the same type of people who were terrified of her skin the second she wasn't smiling. She had been told she spoke so well for someone of your background. She had heard worse. Still, this felt different. It was blatant. Would you like me to bring you anything else? Amina asked, fighting back the heat rising in her throat. No, I'm good, Marjorie said, eyes still glued to her phone, not even looking up. Maybe when your people learn some manners, I'll consider a tip. Amina blinked. The comment sliced through her calm demeanor, but it was nothing new. It was the privilege that made Marjorie's words hit harder. Amina had been playing the game, holding herself to an impossible standard, bending over backwards to get ahead in a world that told her she didn't belong. She bit her tongue and walked away. For a moment, She let herself feel the sting of those words, her hands trembling as she reached the service station. She'd had enough. She hadn't signed up for this job, this life of serving people who wouldn't give her the time of day unless they needed something from her. Marjorie, though, wasn't done. She called Amina over again, her voice now dripping with condescension. "Do you know what I think would really brighten up this place?" Marjorie's tone was mockingly sweet, the kind that made Amina's skin crawl. "Maybe if you wore a lighter shade of makeup. I mean, no offense, but this place just isn't as classy with a face like that. I bet a little less color would really do wonders." The last of Amina's restraints cracked. She straightened up, turned, and walked toward the table once more, her fingers tight on her notepad, her pulse hammering in her ears. Marjorie was still looking down at her phone, unaware of the storm coming her way. "I think it's time to correct you, Mrs. Whitmore," Amina said, her voice surprisingly calm. Marjorie looked up, surprised to hear someone stand up to her. "Excuse me?" Amina took a deep breath. "I may be here to serve you, but you will not disrespect me, my heritage, or my culture. Your words have been offensive, racist, and completely unnecessary." Marjorie blinked, mouth agape. She hadn't expected this. She opened her mouth, but before she could respond, the restaurant door swung open, and the heavy thud of it hitting the wall echoed across the dining room. Amina didn't break eye contact with Marjorie as she stood there, waiting for the words to come, the tension thick in the air. But then she saw him. Her heart skipped a beat as the man entered the room. He was tall, well-dressed in an impeccable suit that caught the light, exuding power and charisma. Oblivious to the confrontation unfolding right before her, Marjorie was still about to make some biting retort when she froze, her face pale. It was him. It was the CEO of the biggest tech company in the nation, Joseph Albright. He had arrived, dressed in a deep navy suit that hugged his tall frame with the precision of custom tailoring. Joseph looked like he had stepped out of a GQ spread. A crisp white shirt peeked from beneath his jacket, its collar sharp and clean, and a subtle, platinum pin, shaped like the company's sleek logo, rested on his left lapel. His leather shoes gleamed with quiet confidence, and his cologne, a sophisticated mix of bergamot and cedarwood, lingered in the air seconds after he passed. There was something magnetic about him. It wasn't just wealth, it was presence. The kind that made people sit straighter, silence their phones, and reconsider their words. The kind that didn't need to raise a voice to fill a room. Without skipping a beat, he strode past Amina with a warm, familiar smile, brushing a gentle hand over her shoulder as he greeted her. The touch was light, but intimate, protective, and possessive in the most respectful way. The entire restaurant paused. The staff instinctively straightened up. Guests peeked from their corners. Even Chef Lewis, known for ignoring anything that wasn't food-related, stepped halfway out of the kitchen. Marjorie, who had been practically drooling over the idea of closing a deal with him for the past few weeks, suddenly shifted. Her posture straightened, her smile widened, and her voice dripped with fake sweetness. "Mr. Albright, what a surprise. So glad to see you here tonight. Please, allow me to offer you a seat." She pulled out the chair next to her, her tone suddenly melodic. Every trace of earlier rudeness vanished in a thin air. "I'm a huge fan of your work. We were just discussing your company's tremendous success." Joseph gave Amina a knowing smile as he took the seat across from her, casting a casual glance at Marjorie. Marjorie noticed the softness of Joseph's eyes on Amina, but waved it off as if he were simply being polite. After all, he was known for his kindness to the less privileged and had received the Humanitarian Award of the Year 5 times in a row. "I'm sure you were," Joseph said, his voice calm and measured. "But I'll tell you, Mrs. Whitmore, it's always enlightening to see how people change their tone in the presence of power." Confused by his tone, Marjorie's cheeks flushed red, but she quickly masked it with another calculated reply. "Oh yes, earlier in the week, I was at your office." Amina watched the scene unfold before her. She'd seen this before, the shift. The way people like Marjorie bent, twisted, and flattered when it suited them. when they thought it was safe. That was why she decided to work here amidst her employees, so she wouldn't be treated nicely just because she is Mrs. Albright and the restaurant owner. "Would you like anything else, Mrs. Whitmore?" she asked, her voice smooth, polite, even. Marjorie blinked, startled. She adjusted her napkin and forced a stiff smile. "No, darling. Maybe Mr. Albright would like something." Amina tilted her head slightly, lips curling into a small, unreadable smile. "Isn't it funny, Mrs. Whitmore?" she said, her tone still courteous. "How quickly someone can go from demanding special treatment to pretending they've never treated anyone as inferior." To Amina's statement, Joseph smiled. "Honey, can you get out of this uniform and change so we can have dinner?" Marjorie opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, awkward, heavy with realization. Joseph stepped closer to Amina, gently brushing a hand against her back as he leaned in to kiss her cheek softly and deliberately. "Yes, she's my wife," he said, straightening up and facing Marjorie with a cool, commanding stare. "And she also happens to be the owner of this restaurant, the one you just tried to humiliate in front of a crowd." Marjorie's smile faltered. Her lips parted as if to protest, but Joseph wasn't done. "Funny how people think they can mistreat someone until they realize who they're standing in front of. I've built companies worth billions, but none of that means anything if I let disrespect slide, especially toward the woman I love." He turned, offering his arm to Amina. She slipped hers through his, a proud, graceful posture replacing the polite professionalism she'd worn like armor all night. They walked toward the private dining suite tucked behind the wine wall. But just before they turned the corner, Joseph paused and looked back, his voice firm, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "Oh, and Mrs. Whitmore," he said, voice laced with finality, "would deal with my company? Consider it canceled. I don't work with mean people." Gasps rippled quietly through nearby tables. Marjorie's face drained of color. She opened her mouth again, this time to plead, but the words crumbled on her tongue. She sat there frozen, napkin clenched in her lap, realization crashing over her like ice water. All her rehearsed charm, her expensive dress, her years of networking, undone in one night by her own arrogance. And by the woman she thought was just a waitress. If this story gave you chills or made you think twice about judging people by appearances, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one.